Hello, and welcome to Tell Me About Your Game, the podcast where we interview new independent board game designers to learn more about the projects and give them the exposure they deserve. Today, we're chatting with Spenser Haffey, the designer of Spell Guardians. Welcome, Spenser.
Nice to be here.
All right, and it's great to have you. So let's just dive right in. Tell us about Spell Guardians. What is your elevator pitch for this game?
Yeah, one sentence would be a cooperative battling deck building game that is also a word game. Sort of a mid-level crunch, which feels rather unique in the games right now.
Got a little bit of a mashup of genres there, it sounds like.
People always are sort of, okay, that's standard, and then word game? Okay.
Yeah, the word game is a little bit of a throw-off. So
Yeah.
why did you decide to make this game? What was your inspiration behind it?
Well, people would think maybe I saw Scrabble and thought I can fight with that. But no, I just enjoy tinkering with resource generation. And initially, the reason was if you think about like Magic and how it has land, what if there was a puzzle to access your mana? And that will make no sense to the game Spell Guardians as it is now. But I thought, okay, what if spelling was the way that you unlocked some power? And ran with it.
Okay. So before we dive into the mechanics of the game, who's your audience? Who did you make this game for?
That's a great question. So initially, I was tinkering with it, and there's sort of a demographic of people that I have a lot of in my life, which are they like these crunchier board games, but they also were like English majors.
It's a very specific.
It is very specific.
Going there.
I do find that combo could be found in two people where they tend to be partners or like good friends, where you might be one of a couple or people that are good friends together, a little crunchier. They like the little crunchier board games. The other one is more of the, more of a reader, more of an English major type person. And this kind of game kind of marries those, and they'll both find something fun in that.
Okay. So, what were the other board games? You did mention Magic. You did say Scrabble was not an inspiration for the game. So other than Magic, were there any other board games or maybe even video games that you drew inspiration from while you were designing Spell Guardians?
Kind of. I think I would maybe single out Slay the Spire just as such an influence in my gameplay. Like I said, it's fully cooperative, and you fight monsters, and I've put a lot of hours into that game, both physical and digital. But I don't think that you'll see too many mechanics directly echoed from other games. I think it's more of kind of a general send up of the sort of cooperative combat, level up some kind of genre, and then you find a way to integrate the spelling.
Okay. So, I just know when I've worked on my own designs, there's always some core principles that I'm thinking about at the beginning that are like what I call the non-negotiables. These are the elements that need to be present in the game. Do you have any of those core design principles for Spell Guardians?
Yeah, so the game has changed a lot, and I'm very, as a designer, very open to making even sweeping changes. I think aside from the obvious, you level up and you fight monsters and you spell words, like the core of it, that very basic kernel hasn't changed. And then the other thing I was trying to keep as a North Star was keeping a multi-audience in mind. So as I spoke earlier, you have these sort of English major types that like spelling and like spelling challenges, and then you have these crunchier, I like leveling up and gaining new spells and new cards to play from my hand and figuring out which monster is the best to attack. And I would add a third category, which is the people that really enjoy cooperative, like challenging cooperative games where you're kind of like really put against the rails, and it's like, we're going to fight through this, we're going to do it together or we'll die trying, which there's overlap between those three categories, but the idea of we're trying to entice the people that like spelling, the people that like the crunchy combat, and the people that like the challenging cooperative, sort of putting those together, and making sure they all have a path to have fun in the game.
So, you've talked a bit about how the leveling up and the fighting the monsters were really the driving desire, the driving element behind the game. How did you land on spelling words as an avenue for this?
Well, I've designed some other in the sort of vein of cooperative combat. Starting back with maybe 2 decades ago of I like playing Magic, but I wish I could play it cooperatively. And then, yeah, like I mentioned earlier, I wanted to find a way that these certain cards within your hand represent a complex array of decisions. And one of the ways to do that was, what can you spell with them? And the answer tends to be a lot of stuff, but there's an ordering and a certain layer of that adds a challenge to, now you've done the spelling, and that creates a resource, and then you use that to fight these monsters.
So do the letters sort of in order sort of take the place of, maybe an incantation? Because I'm thinking about, some video games when you're casting spells and you have to click on icons in a specific order to cast the spell. Is that the concept behind the words and the letters in Spell Guardians?
Something like that. There's a layer between that where you, as we'll see, you spell the word, and that gives you a resource. And the resource is a specific kind of resource. They're called glyphs. And different spells need different types of glyphs. So you will think, I need to cast this spell to deal with this monster, or whatever it is you're doing with the spell. And so I need to spell a word of a certain kind. I have requirements to spell the word that way. But you can store them up between turns. It's not directly a one-to-one.
Okay. And I guess what's occurring to me as we're talking is, having played games before where you have to do quote unquote incantations, and I know you're saying it's not quite the one-to-one correlation, but in games like that, you kind of have to memorize, okay, like, I have to do fire, and then I have to do wind, and then I have to do earth. And this one, you don't, I guess, have to memorize anything because they're just words. So you have that combination, but no memorization required.
Well, and in a way, you have done memorization just your whole life as you
correct. Yes,
speaking the language. It's like tapping into a skill that you don't need to generate a new skill set as you're playing the game that's bespoke to the game, because it's there already.
So what you're saying, Spenser, if I'm understanding, is our entire life has been training for Spell Guardians. That's
precisely. This is everyone's destiny. Yes.
So I think we might know this already, but other than maybe the spelling, what do you think are the key rules and mechanics that define Spell Guardians and give it its identity? Again, other than the spelling, which is unique. And I have to say also, what occurs to me, I've seen a wide variety of word games. I don't think I've ever seen a cooperative word game. I just wanted to put that out there because that's interesting. So, but what else defines Spell Guardians for you?
Oh, yeah. Well, and you say that because they tend, and I'm sure there are examples I'm missing, but they tend to be a little simpler. So there's kind of not room to make it juicy and cooperative. Right. I actually can't think of one that is cooperative, but there's not a lot of them. Oh. But yeah, to answer your question, I would maybe, in a nutshell, define it as a loop and a path, where the loop is spelling a word, gets you resources to cast a spell, and a lot of those spells help you then spell future words, like giving you a wild card, for example. So there's kind of a loop there, and then off that loop you have some of the spell power being used to fight the monsters as well. And then there's a path that sort of leads to the progression to the end of the game, where you fight monsters, gives you these clue cards, or the search cards rather, that you then have to decipher by spelling with them in a certain way. And then that gets you these secrets, and you use the secrets to do a final spelling challenge cooperatively as a group. And that's how you win the game.
Okay, it almost sounds like the world's most stressful spelling bee.
I am aiming for If you only kind of like spelling, you will still enjoy the game. If you hate
Okay.
spelling, maybe move on to the next game.
Yeah, I think that is a key element in any spelling game. It needs to obviously be a fun game, even if you don't enjoy spelling. Because I have to say, having played Scrabble many times in my life, I am not a huge fan of Scrabble, because basically all you are doing is spelling and trying to fit them onto very predefined spaces on the board. So it sounds like this game has a lot more flexibility built around it. It's got some more strategic decisions surrounding it. So it definitely sounds
Yeah.
intriguing to me.
So if you are the kind of person that enjoys the crunchy, then that's what you can have. Yeah. And unlike Scrabble, it's cooperative, so I don't feel the stress of I know that person can spell better than me,
Right.
and I'm just waiting for them to beat me. Like with the Words with Friends games, I'm in a few of those, and they're always a little stressful.
Yeah, and honestly, for me, not to talk too much about Scrabble, the stress for me has always been like, I need to get this X onto this specific square. And how do I do that? And I don't find that to be a particularly fun aspect. So it sounds like Spell Guardians may address that. I mean, for example, I do very much enjoy Paperback. I think that's a fun game. So it sounds like it might be Paperback only with with a fair amount of other strategy and some cooperative elements. So you may have answered this one already also, but there are also, you know, games that are interesting the first or second or third time that we play all need something to bring you back after you've kind of plumbed, understand the shape of the game and you understand the basic strategy of the game. What have you found to be the fun in your game? What keeps players coming back for more in Spell Guardians?
Yeah, I think again it goes back to the player types, sort of archetypes. Core spelling. Some people I just had spelling. I have letters in front of me, and it's fun to do the where does this go? And some people just like that. Um, I am the kind of person that really likes the fact that you can add new spells. Like there's a deck of new spells you can add, and also new ink cards, which that's the cards with the letters on them. So there's sort of like there's enough of them that every game you're not going to see. You're going to have to play a bunch before you see all of them. That's the kind of thing that I love. There's also a variety in the villains that you fight. So that's an appeal as well.
And I think there's a bit of there's some variable player powers if I'm remembering correctly
Correct.
also.
There's also character cards. They align. We'll go over them in the future here coming up, but they align to these people that want to play the game. But you have different selections within that. Even if you're like, the only thing I want to do is spell, that's what I want to do. I'm good at. That's what I want to do. You still have a few options that you can play each game.
Yeah, and I speaking personally, I like games where I can, the core game is the same, but I go in with different abilities, so it's a little bit of a twist.
Yeah.
So I think that's the kind of thing that would probably keep me coming back. But you've mentioned the cards a few times because it is primarily a card game. So let's dive in and take a look at some of the cards. So here is our first card. Why don't you talk a little bit about it? And well, it looks like a few cards actually. What is that?
Yeah.
Or is that one card?
This is 4 cards.
Yeah.
You can see the R is one card, so it's just there's an R and then it's on the left and the right, so you can see
Yeah.
it as you fan your hand out. Yeah. So for this, we can sort of have a brief example here of how the core spelling works. There are some cards to which this is an exception, but the basic idea of a card is what matters is the length of the word. So in this case, that's a 4-letter word. I have this as spelling room, but I think you can spell a couple different things. The length of the word is 4, and then the other card that matters is the first card. So in this case, you're spelling room, and you can see how it has these red squares. Those are glyphs, and that's the resource you'll get. So when you spell this word, you get 4 red glyphs, red square glyphs. And you could, if you would like, obviously you can see you can rearrange this. So if you decide you'd rather have purple, you can see the last card is an M. You can spell more instead, literally just swap the M and the R. And now you're getting still 4, but now they're purple, the circled purple glyphs instead.
Okay. So that's interesting that the first letter of the word actually has a large impact on the effect of the resources that you're getting. Do the glyphs, are those the glyphs, the icons in the bottom, do they mean anything if they're on other letters in the word, or is it only the
Mm.
first letter?
It's only the first one. There's a couple of card types that are the exception to this that will hit, but the majority of the cards, especially the starting ones, are simply what matters what you start with.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so now we're going to be looking at two different cards. Why don't you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah, so as you saw in the last example, we have three different kinds of glyphs. Those are the three, there aren't anymore. And they each do a specific thing, um, which is they cast spells. And I don't want to go into exactly what all the spells do, but these are the three spells you start with. You can get more. They do more stuff, more interesting, cool stuff you can do with your spells. But the three starting ones are these three: the Ink Blade, Careful Study, and Infuse. And what those do, again, I won't go into details, but the red spells, including Inkblade, are aggressive. That's what you're going to use to damage monsters. So you might be looking at your hand and think, we have too many guys on the field. We need to start dealing with some of these. I'm going to try to spell a red letter, or I'm spelling a word that starts with one of these red letters. The purple is sort of a utility and helps you advance and level up a little more.
Mm-hmm.
And the blue is a defensive generally. You can see, and if it's readable, but you can see this basic infuse restores health to the Sanctum, which is what you're trying to defend. It also gives you a wild card.
Okay. All right. So I think that it's coming together in my head now. So you spell the words that give you the glyphs, and you use those glyphs to cast the spells.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're there is sort of a one-to-one where if you're thinking what I need to do is cast infuse, you could find a four-letter blue, a four-letter word that starts with blue. But if you find a five-letter word, you have one extra, and you keep that, so you can use it later. And some of the spells you can get are multicolored, so they'll sort of combine effects. But these are the starting ones; they're simpler.
Okay. So we're going to look at two different cards right now. So I see we've got a monster on the right there next to the card, Spencer. How do the monsters work?
Yeah. So the big thing that you care about is the big old 7. You see this goblin scrapper has a 7 on it, and then it's got 2. So the 2 is the health on the middle left of the card, and the 7 is its defense. So when you spell a word, you get the glyphs like we just talked about. So you get these resources, and you also could damage a monster. But you can only target a monster with 7. In this case, the goblin scrapper. You need to have a length of 7
Oh, wow.
in order to fight that goblin. And there are different ways to cheat it. And I said I wouldn't talk about specific spells, but for example, Careful Study, the one in purple there, it says the next word that you spell counts as +1 length. So you can sort of
Hmm.
chain these together, and then the infuse gives you a wild card. So you can try to, I can't quite get to 7, but I can get close. Maybe infused adds an S to make it plural, and then I cast Careful Study, and now I'm there.
Can you cast more than one spell in your turn?
As many as you want, as long as you have the
Okay.
resources.
So interesting. So they have a health, and it's almost like the length of the word that's needed is almost like the monster's like armor or defense that
Yeah,
you need to get
defense.
through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool. So we've got two new cards here. We've got an E, we've got some tokens. Spencer, tell us a little bit about those.
Sure. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, you have this loop of spelling cards and casting spells and fighting monsters. To the backdrop of that is you're trying to win the game, obviously. Fighting the monsters prevents your sanctum from falling. That's that's the lose condition, right? The win condition is solving this rune of banishment, which I think we'll see a little bit later. The way you do that is to get these secrets. Essentially, it looks kind of like a crossword puzzle. You can see the 9 tokens that we have on the right of the screen here. Those are secrets. The way you get them is by deciphering clues, and the card on the left is a clue card. So what that means is, once you have that in your hand, it has an E, so it's a letter, it counts as an E, as as all the other cards, but it's got a 4 under the magnifying glass icon. So what that means is if you use the E in the 4th letter slot, for example, the word game, GAME, E is in the 4th letter slot, then that counts as deciphering the card, and you will get some secrets.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So there is a bit of a, I don't even know what I would call it, sort of like a, because it's a word game, not quite set collection, but it's almost like, so you need to gather these clue cards so that you can then decipher things and use them in a specific way. Okay.
Yeah, and it's all, again, done cooperatively. You'll have, I think we'll briefly touch on it, but you have a skill track, so your different skills you level up in as you play the game. And one of those is investigating, which makes it so when you do decipher a card, you get more secrets.
Got it.
Or better secrets.
Okay, so there's a bit of a power ramp up, as with any, almost like a light role-playing game, where you get more powerful as you play the game.
Yeah, and you can imagine if you're solving a crossword, the ones at the bottom, the golden ones, those are wilds. That's quite useful. So that's at the very end of the track. If you level that up all the way, then when you start deciphering, you'll just get wilds.
Okay, cool. All right, and then we've got one more set of cards to look at. Why don't you tell us a little bit about these, the character cards?
Yeah, so just briefly, we don't need to go into too much detail. There's, I think, 24 of them, something like that. They are divided into 4 archetypes, and those align with, as I was talking earlier, about the kind of person that wants to play the game. So we have, well, I was discussing 3 kinds of people that would play the game. The 4th archetype is the warden, which is just like a little bit simpler. So that's like recommended for your first game, or if you see the crunch in front of you and you don't want to add a little bit more to that, you can take the warden, one of the warden cards, and they'll be a little simpler for you to play with. The mystics they have passive abilities that are a little more complex. And these are on the top left is the little icon. So on the very left of their screen, that's the warden. And then we have the mystic icon. These are a little more mechanically complex. So if you want a little more crunch and you want to dig into that, you can use that to your advantage. The advisors they all have the ability to share their cards with people. So that's if you're really trying to play that more supportive role, you like helping your friends, and you just want to win the game together. And then lastly is the scholar. Those are also passive abilities, but they all reference spelling in some way. So you can see for the one you have in front of you, the Theus Raven, he's a scholar card. And he says whenever you damage a monster, you can steal a letter from their name to use sometime this turn. And that is, you pick one of these character cards each game. You start the game with it.
Okay, interesting. I actually think that Theus Raven ability sounds very cool. I feel like that's one of the first ones I'd want to grab, because it just sounds like a lot of fun. Okay, so now we've gone through a bunch of the cards, so I think it's time to take a look at the game itself and see how they interact. So we've got a little bit of a game scene here. What are we looking at here?
Yeah, so we're going to go through a couple of different screens here. The first one you're looking at, this is just a bit of a microcosm of what would be like the first turn, right? So this is like you just booted up. You just started the game, and you're on your very first turn. So we have it set up here. You draw 6 cards, which we've done. And just for example, there's a couple of monsters there. There's probably more. It depends on how many players are in the game, but there's a couple you can see that are in the center, quote unquote, right? You can see they have a defense of 4 and 5.
Okay, so we got this monster here, the Betrayer.
Yeah,
and then we've got the Betrayer D. Oh, okay. 2 Betrayers.
Yeah, they're we'll get a little bit slightly more creative names as we go on, but
okay.
Yeah, these betrayers are the people that betrayed your order and let the invaders in the first case. So they're like the intro monsters. You fight them first because they are the ones that they're there and they're letting the monsters in, and then some scarier stuff will come through. So you can see we have it set up here. You could spell clued, right? You have CL, 2 vowel cards, and a D. So you could do that. That starts with red. And let's say you're playing this game and you got a friend, you're playing with a couple of people, and your friend says, I want to stab all the monsters. So, okay, you could also stab the monsters, but you need someone to start deciphering the clues and leveling up in that case. The best way, the spell that helps you decipher would be infuse, because it gives you wild cards, and that's helpful when you're trying to like position the clue cards exactly where you need them. Well, if you have a card that says this counts as any letter, that would be ideal for you, right?
So that gold card symbol is a clue card?
That is a wild card.
That's a wild card. Okay.
Yeah. So you can store your glyphs. So what you're thinking is, I'm going to get these search cards, the clue cards, later, because my friend over here, he's going to do all the stabbing. So what I'm going to do is try to level up my search and prepare for that. So you're going to instead decide to spell a blue card. So you're like, okay, I want blue because red, my ally's going to handle red. He's going to do all the murdering. So you instead want to spell duel.
That's the one I was thinking of.
There you go. And you'll note that this is 4, so you can't damage one of the betrayers, but you could damage the other one. So you can do that. If we do that, we would add 4 of the blue glyphs, and we would mark 1 damage on the betrayer with the 4 defense, right? We could, if we wanted to, we could use, because you start with a few glyphs, you can see there's like a little bit that you start with. We could cast Careful Study, which would artificially increase the length by 1, and then we could damage the 5. So the next word you spell counts as +1 length. So you could say, I'm going to spell duel, and I'm going to get my blue glyphs, but I also am going to hurt the 5 defense guy.
Got it.
So you could do that. You could also, if you wanted to, you could add a wild card with infuse and then make it plural, so DUELS. And then also do 5, but that's up to you how you want to handle that.
Interesting. Okay. So what are these tracks down here?
Yeah, so it's a lot to go over sort of in situ, but in brief, the top track is decanting, and that determines how many cards you draw.
Okay.
Each turn. And unlike the other ones, you don't pay to level them up. You level that track up. It sort of is a personal best. So you can see there's like it says a 6 length. So whenever you spell a 6 length word, you can move that marker over 1, and now you're drawing 7 cards.
Got it.
But spelling a 6 length word doesn't help anymore. Now you need to spell a 7 to level that up. And so it sort of is like a personal best, that tracker throughout the game. And then briefly, skirmishing. For the rest of the 3, you pay glyphs to level them up. And for skirmishing, you count the monster's defense as less the more you level it up. So on level 1, it would be -1, right? So it'd be the 2 at the top would be a 3 and a 4 instead of a 4 and a 5. But that's what your friend's doing. Your friend's doing the murdering. They're going to do skirmishing.
Right.
You might decide to do a little bit of hexing. Hexing is these bonus cards I don't have on screen, but they debuff the monsters. So you'll play them. They're like they have letters on them, and you play them normally, and then they'll debuff the monster with a few different options. And then that helps your friend kill them. Or there's one that when the monster dies, you get a secret for it. And then investigating, that's what triggers whenever you do decipher a clue. So that's what you're going to look at for this game, because like I said, your friend's doing all the murdering. Leave that to him. You might help him with some hexing, but you're going to need to do the investigating.
Okay. All right. Very interesting. All right. So we have another scene that we can look at here. So what do we got going on in this one?
Yeah. So this scene, we are, maybe turn 3, something like that. You can see we've put a few levels in, a few stuff. That's kind of what you're doing. You've gone twice into investigation and once in hexing. You spent a lot of your glyphs to do stuff, right? I'm not going to go through this full turn, but you can see in your hand that second card is a search card. You've the last couple turns, you've been able to defeat some monsters, and you've been able to get this card, right? So this is saying you need a 3 in the, or sorry, you need an O in the third spot,
Right.
in order to decipher it. So if you look at the rest of your hand, you can see, of course, we have it laid out. How perfect! You can spell Scout. The SC, that's a bonus card, so that is a better card that you earned earlier last turn, maybe. And that has 2 letters on it, so it counts as 2 letters. So you spell Scout, and the O is in the third spot. By spelling Scout, SCOUT, that is 5 letters, so you get 5 glyphs, even though it's only 4 cards.
Right.
And you're able to decipher that O. And as a reminder, deciphering gets you secrets, and you can see it's a little bit hard to quite tell, but at the bottom of the investigating track there, you are on the 2nd level.
Yep.
So that has the magnifying glass symbol, and then it has a white and a gray secret. So when you decipher that, you're going to take this O out. It is gone. It is removed from your deck. You have to earn more clues to earn more secrets. So I'm going to take that away. But you get these secrets. So you get one of each because you leveled that investigating track up. If you did it one more time,
you just get 1 white, right? If you hadn't leveled it up, you would just get 1 white secret.
At level 0, if you want to call it, you get 1 white. At level 1, you choose between white or gray, and you can see as I flip these, they are letters, and the gray ones are all vowels. So you can begin collecting clues and helping your friends try to solve this center rune, but someone needs to start getting vowels at some point, or you're not going to be able to spell anything.
Right.
And of course, if you had leveled up 1 more time, you would have earned a wild one instead, which is very powerful, but also expensive to level up into.
Okay. Very, very interesting. I am deeply intrigued by this game. And I see we've gotten some more. We've gotten at least 1 more spell here.
Yeah, we've earned this one, Psychic Sweep. So that symbol means gain a search card. So those clues that we're talking about, that's probably how you got it. You did that last round. That's a bonus spell. You can see it's rainbow because it counts as any glyph. You can just use a single any glyph to cast it. Some of them will have triggered abilities instead. Those are called familiars. Well, whenever you cast a spell, do this, draw a card, whatever it is it says. There's a few of those as well. And just noting also briefly,
yes.
You spelled Scout.
Well, you did, but sure.
Well, the royal U spelled spelled Scout. You can also spell other words. So you can see this is you could spell Shelly, to have a shell, which is just particularly powerful because this is 3 cards, but 6 letters. So you would get 6 glyphs for that. And as
both
you get
Scout and Shelly, just to make sure I understand, because they're 5 letters and 6 letters, you would be able to also damage this monster with a defense of 5.
Yep, excellent, correct. So that one would have 2 damage marked on it. This one is a very scary guy who has 9 health, but you're working with your team to take him down. That's not going to be just your job. But yeah, that's just to illustrate that, especially as you move on and take further turns, like turn 3, 4, 5, when we're getting near the end of the game, you are allowed to spell multiple words, and that becomes part of the puzzle of what monster defenses are out there, what kind of glyphs do I need, and then what can I spell? Is it like I should be spelling 3 words, 1 long one? So it sort of starts simple and balloons up a little bit.
So I see that this fellow, the troll brute, it says he does 20 damage to, I believe that's the sanctuary symbol, right?
Yeah, Sanctum, yes.
So when does that horrible thing happen?
All of the things we talked about occur in the action phase. There's a little reminder on the board you can see.
Here we go.
Yeah, all of those things occur in the action phase. There's just to very briefly, the 3 other phases. There's Inkwell, which is when you draw cards. Some effects might trigger. The rune phase is what we'll go over next, and that's when you lock in words to solve the center rune. And then at the very end, there is the bad guys, and they do bad guy stuff. There's monsters. That guy's a monster. They will do their attack, whatever their attack is, and then the villain will go, who will also attack, and then summon more monsters.
Okay. So I see it says in the action phase you take action simultaneously. So is it during the action phase the players don't take turns? They can mix and match what they're doing? Is that
Yes,
right?
it is simultaneous, which can get kind of chaotic, but I definitely found it's more fun and allows people to speed the game up a bit and to work together closely if that's the kind of person you want to do. You can do all of those actions as many times as you want. There's no limit to them. They will all require resources, and so you'll burn through. You'll end up with nothing left to do, and then you say, "Okay, I'm done."
Right. But that means, I guess, that if, for example, one of my, partners is on the hexing track, they could cast their hexes to maybe debuff the monster, and then I could wait for that. And then if I'm doing skirmishing, I could then attack that monster and take advantage of the debuff. Is that how it would work?
Yeah, or just you don't have to be doing skirmishing. Yeah, if you you spell Shelly here, which is a
Sure.
six letter
Yeah.
word. That guy is a defensive 5, but let's say he had a defensive 7, or even I believe the hexing one that debuffs defense is -3. So if he had a defensive 9, you could still hit him if your ally was able to debuff him with the hex.
Oh, neat. Okay, so it really does. There is a very true collaborative, cooperative element where you want to strategize together about not only what spells you're going to cast, but the order in which you're going to cast them can make a big difference.
Yeah, that's what we're striving for, to make it really feel cooperative on top of everything else, obviously.
Okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the rune. This is what we're investigating, correct?
Yeah, so you could zoom in a little if you'd like. This is the center puzzle. You can see at the top right, it's 3, and this is the 3 or 4 player one. If you're 3 players, you would ignore the gray 4 player squares, right? So,
Okay.
that's how that scales. You can see in this example, they have already locked in a word. So when you lock in a word, you see there's these symbols. This means you get a new spell if you're locking in over a word. So I believe, if I'm not wrong, nope, it's not that one. It's that one. So when they locked in this word, they locked in this U over this symbol. And so that's why, as you saw in the last example, these players have an extra spell. He had the one that gave you a search card.
Right.
So, and I'm saying, that's what you've done. I'm flying in here. Last turn, we saw you earned this R and this, or this R, yeah, it's R and this I. Note that this wild here, this can be anything, but it has to make sense with both up
Right.
and across and down, right? If that makes
Right.
sense.
So this could be either an N or a B, for example.
It could be an M, a G, an E, a
An
T, or a
E,
B.
a G, right.
It can be a lot of things. So this is a very good play to get your first spell and to really have a lot of options then for that. But it does have to be one of them. So that's sort of your early calculus of, if we can get a couple of wilds in the early game, how's the best way to position those?
But you don't need to declare it when you place it. It just needs to be able to make a word. Like you could think it was, for
Yeah.
example, rug. But then if someone needed an N there, you could say, well, it's actually an N because that works in both the run and whatever the word going down is. You can change your mind as long as they're still both words.
Yeah, it's in a super state of both at once, right? Of
Yes.
all of these different options, if you can find a way to create a word that allows you to have different options.
It's Schrodinger's letter. Okay.
Sure, yeah, exactly. So in this example, we just got the R and the I, and we could do someone, maybe I finish early, I've done all my spells, and I'm over here, I'm looking at this rune of banishment. So I'm observing this a little bit. It's allowing, if someone ends their cooperative, their simultaneous play a little early, okay, they can pan over to the rune of banishment and begin to sort of think in their head. And let's say that happens, and I realize with the R and the I, so we just earned, remember, we just earned this R and this I. I can spell greet down. So greet. That locks this in as E. So rue is a word. So greet. And that leaves, I'm also thinking, I'm telling you, we're talking about this as we go. The R, the U, and the N are locked in, but we're like, oh, do we like this or not? Oh, well, I'm realizing also then we could have the N, the I, and the S up here. So now this is something ings, and that's a lot easier. So like, okay, that's a good choice. We're gonna lock that in, and then we get a second new spell, and we're that much closer to victory.
Okay. So the runes, the letters, as you earn them, they are shared property. Like they don't belong to any one person. They're communal.
You flip them over to the center, and whoever has the availability of the time can start puzzling that over.
Okay, and then once you fill that in, you've won the game.
Yep, you've won the game. So we're closer. We're much closer now. That's a big one. We still need to earn, I think technically we earn like 5 more, but they would need to be perfect.
So how do you lose? How do you lose the game?
You lose when that Sanctum, you see that monster, 20 damage to the Sanctum. Yep. It starts at 100. Hit 0. You're toast.
Oh my god, that 20. So that 20 is a really big hit.
It is a pretty solid hit. Yeah, they are all static numbers to make the math easier and the simple resolution of that monster step, except the villain who rolls dice for it.
Okay.
So I like that little bit of extra tension of, I think we survive this turn, but if it rolls max, we're definitely dead. Oh, so do I need to cast? Yeah, then you're thinking, oh, do I need to cast this spell that heals the Sanctum? But I don't want to do that yet.
Right.
But I might have to. So that's sort of the
right, because there's always the opportunity cost that once you're using a letter for one word, that means you're not using it for something else and casting a different spell. Okay, interesting. How long does a typical game take?
It's about 75 minutes if you know what you're doing. So I would say 90 is probably what I'd put on the box maybe. Right. Which would include a teach. Could be a little longer, could be a little shorter, but generally about 90. It doesn't vary that much. It plays up because of the simultaneous play, so you don't have too much of a variance in time. And it does play up to 6 people.
Oh, wow.
Which is a lot for this sort of a crunchy game. But again, it's simultaneous, so you don't end up with too much additional time. But of course, that would add a little bit of time. And I would note on the time specifically, the supportive archetype of characters, which allows you to share your cards, that does tend to add like 5 to 10 minutes each for each person that selected that, because now you have to think, okay, I have my hand of 7 cards, but I also have that guy's hand of 7 cards, so it can expand. But some people really like that.
Okay. So Spenser, I guess as we're closing out, if someone is intrigued by Spell Guardians, where can they learn more about it?
Yeah, so at the moment, I do have a Discord. I'm gonna keep it private for a little bit longer.
Okay.
As we build a little bit of steam. I do have an email that I'm happy to give. I think it'll be in show notes.
Yes, you can put in the show notes.
I can say it out loud too. It's mythodelgames at gmail.com. And it is playable online. You can find me on Break My Game, for example, that Discord server. But if someone wants to play, just shoot me an email. I'm happy to set up some time. We can just play.
Okay, great. So Spenser, I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your game with us. I encourage everyone who might be interested in learning a bit more about Spell Guardians to reach out in the ways that Spenser described. And if you have enjoyed today's show, please like and subscribe and leave a comment below. And if you are an independent board or tabletop game publisher, please reach out to me. There'll be my contact information in the show notes below. And I'd be happy to discuss having you on the show. Until then, Thank you all. Thank you, Spencer, and everyone have a great day.